Hello YouTube, welcome back. Chris here. I want to do a video on a very commonly asked question here in the bike shop. In front of me I have a Specialized Alley Tiagra. This bike's probably 3 or 4 years old. It is a used bike. It has been ridden. It was traded in here at the shop. A very common question I get here at the shop, with gravel bikes being all the rage, is how can I turn my old road bike, my backup road bike, into a gravel bike? I hear this a lot. Gravel bikes are popular now. People usually don't want to spend a lot on them if they're roadies and they are just looking to try out the sport. So a lot of people think they can just take their old road bike, throw some different tires on it, and you've got a gravel bike. Well, not that simple. Now keep in mind, every bike is different, so not every case is the same as this, but I kind of want to show you some things you can do and can't do with a bike like this to make it into a gravel bike. First thing we'll talk about is gearing. This bike has obviously got road gearing. It's got a 50-34 in the front, compact road crank. Pretty easy to fix. I mean, you could definitely just get some different chain rings, make that more cross-friendly. In the back, we've got a road cassette. I'm going to guess that's probably 1125. Again, pretty simple to do. You could up that to an 1127, 1128, something like that, and be pretty well set for gravel. You could also do a 1x setup if you want to change the cranks, or maybe even just pull a ring off of that crank and make it a 1x. You may need to, depending on how big you want to go in gearing, you may need a new rear derailleur, but still not the end of the world, something you could definitely do. So gearing wise, you could make this pretty acceptable for a cross bike, a gravel bike or a cross bike. The next thing we talk about is the frame geometry. Now, I'm going to not really make a big point out of this because I'm guessing if you're trying to make a road bike into a gravel bike, you don't really care too much about it being perfect in the right geometry for comfort and all that. You're just looking for an extra bike, something to try it out with. Road bike, especially in a lay, something with a little bit more race geometry. Much shorter in the head tube here, a little longer in the top tube. The angles on your head tube and your seat tube are going to be a little more steep. This is a more aggressive bike. It's a road bike, something for road racing, road events. Not really designed so much for off-road handling, but not a huge deal. You could definitely get away with using that for gravel, especially if it was just something you're going to, dabble with and not get too serious about. The big thing I want to talk about is the tires, because that's obviously what defines a gravel bike for the most part. Is going to be the off-road capability, which is mostly dictated by the tires. So this bike currently has a Specialized, I can't pronounce this tire, Espoir. If you know the name, leave it in the comments. That'd be great. Love to know how to say that. 700 by 25 tire. Pretty typical road tire nowadays. It has rim brakes. This is an older road bike, probably 3-4 years old. The more modern ones usually have disc, which can help in this situation. If you look here, you have a little bit of tire clearance, not a ton. If we look down at the frame, pretty tight on the sides of the tire, but a little bit of tire clearance. We could go a little bit bigger on this tire, but not much. We could definitely do a 28 millimeter tire, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. Much more than that, it's going to be pretty tough to do with those rim brakes. Let's take a look at the fork as well. A little bit tighter up here. You can see that brake runs pretty close to the tire. You've got a few millimeters to work with. You do want to leave a little bit of room for mud clearance as well if you're doing gravel riding. But we could definitely do a slightly wider tire in here. So let's try on some 28s here and see what that looks like. Also, I want to show you this bike over here. This is a older, probably a 2000, 5-ish. I may be way off on that, but just guessing. Bianchi Cross Concept. This is an old cyclocross bike. Cool bike. A little bit more gravel oriented. Obviously it's a cross race bike, not a gravel bike, but pretty similar. You can see here, a little different gearing, but also the brakes. These used to use a cantilever brake. This was kind of predating disc brakes on cross bikes and gravel bikes and road bikes. So they used to use a cantilever, which would give you a lot more clearance in the frame here. Now, on these older cross bikes, you often see a real thin cyclocross tire. You could go a little bit wider on this, maybe up to a 35, maybe a 38. Gets a little tight down here. and we'll tie it up here in the fork. I actually got a lot of room in the fork, but this is actually a 700 by 30 tire. And the reason I wanted to use this is we're going to try and put this on the allay and see what happens. So let's try some tires on our road bike here and see what we can do. So I removed the 700 by 25 tires and I installed a specialized all-condition armadillo tire in a 700 by 28. I picked this tire for a couple reasons. Number one, it's an incredibly durable tire. It's much like your Continental Gator skin or any Kevlar lined tire. So it'll be a little better for puncture resistance if you're riding on some rougher terrain. Number two, of all road tires, it has a little bit of grip. Not a ton, but it has some traction. And when you're talking gravel, traction is important. And most people who are doing a gravel conversion, they want traction. But here we can see on a 28, we're running super close to the inside of the brake here. Also, when we talk down in the frame, kind of hard to get a view of this, super close tolerances. So not a lot of room to work with, not a lot of room for if you're picking up debris and mud. You're probably going to scrape up your frame quite a bit. You can see on the fork, same story, very close. Not a lot of room to work with there, not a lot of margin for error. Also hard to get them in and out of the brakes, not a huge deal, but you can see just in general, these will spin, but they aren't giving you a lot of leeway there. So, is this bike more capable right now? Yes. It could handle rougher terrain than it did before. It's got more puncture resistant tires, it's got wider tires, it's got more traction, but I wouldn't call it a gravel bike by any stretch of the imagination. You know, when people are talking gravel, they're looking for this, not that. You know, and it does make a big difference. Next, I'm going to try to squeak these 700 by 30 tires in here. Pretty positive they're not going to fit, but I'm going to show you just so you can see and see what you think. Well, look at that. They fit. Well, not really. Can't even turn the wheels. So this is what I'm talking about. I mean, to get a proper tire that you would actually want to ride gravel on, and this would be thin even for gravel, it's kind of hard to find a 700 by 30 with any sort of real tread on it. They really don't work, and it's just because the limitations of the brakes and the frame. And so yeah, hope this was helpful. Hope you learned something today. If you have any questions, comments, and please keep in mind this is not the case with every road bike, but the majority of them, this is what I see. So let me know what you think, and please like and subscribe. I'm going to make some more like this. Thank you.